Welcome to Gigacast episode 17 for Sunday, June 24th, live to tape from the Gigacast Dungeon headquarters. I'm Britton Johnson.
And broadcasting live from my home lab, I'm Tony Reeves.
So people are picking on me about my office, Tony.
What are they saying?
They're saying that I have a dungeon office where people are murdered because I sent out a picture yesterday.
Okay.
I'm in the basement.
Yeah.
And, I'm where my desk is situated currently. It's on the side of the basement where there are no windows.
Yeah.
And
concrete.
Over behind me, there's a corner that's a slightly quieter. It's under our main bedroom, master bedroom. And there is a window over there. And there was this really old, cobbled together redneck workbench that was there.
Okay.
And I just ripped it out the other day. And I took a picture and tweeted it looking for home office design advice from the crew on the Twitters. And everybody's like, oh my gosh, it looks like you have a murder scene going on there. And I'm just like, thanks for that help. Not.
Nice. Well, you do have that wrinkly sheet. You need to get a.
I know. See, and that's that. Yeah. So that's the goal here is I'm going to move my dungeon headquarters office from one side of the dungeon to the other, and then eventually build walls and have a door I can close. And so when things are happening upstairs from the family, you don't hear it during the podcast.
Nice.
But yeah, so that's kind of what's happening. Hey, quick update for you.
Yeah.
Actually, with a guy who was picking on me, Tim Davis, he's going to be our next guest on the podcast.
I heard a rumor. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
So he's our July guest, July 15th. We're going to get online and talk to Tim, and
I wonder what we could be talking about.
It's going to be a very interesting episode because currently I'm working on a project for Tim's former employers. So I actually
inside dirt that we can share out on.
Yeah, I'm working with the guy who says he taught Tim everything he knows about VMware. So I'm gonna get some good information from this fellow, and we'll talk to Tim, and it'll be great.
Sounds like fun.
Yeah. Anything going on with you?
I shaved my head.
Yeah, I see that.
Yeah.
You're trying to copycat me or something.
Well,
Great minds. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. We have a super, super duper special guest today as well. I have just met him a moments ago, and I always screw up people's last names. Hopefully I don't do it this time. Welcome to the Gigacast, Mr. Aaron Bewley.
Oh, perfect. You nailed it.
Yes.
Got it.
Congratulations.
For the win.
Personally,
it took me a year to get it right.
Yeah. My wife still doesn't get it right. My
how often do you call bully?
A lot. Yeah. It's mostly bully. And then sometimes people throw an R in there and put burly.
Oh, see, that I would be okay with.
You a burly man?
I think you need to run with that background, though. It looks like you have a sheet up blocking like the freezer where you keep all the dead bodies.
Yeah, I pretty much do. So
you should up the game, turn it into like a dirty white, what do you call it? A shower curtain. And with like some blood splats on it.
Well, no, they actually, I've seen it on the internet, so it's got to be true, right? They actually sell like those, shower curtains from the movie, the
slasher movies.
Slasher movie, But no, what it's actually hiding is my kids' play area down here.
Oh, nice. There you go.
Because we live in Wisconsin, and so we can only go outside to play about 5% of the year.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's the real reason, is just to try to give it, some mental space between me and the kids.
For those of y'all that are listening and not watching, Tony's got like Ferrari posters and a 3D printer, and Britton's got like Tony the Tiger and like a little baby rocking chair. It's kind of funny.
Well, you have daughters, so you understand.
This is true. Yes.
Yeah.
This is actually the only area in my house that doesn't look like it's covered in glitter and pink, pink buttons and stuff.
Yeah. That's the plight of having girls, is like everything is just covered in pink. So,
yes.
Your house. So what you're saying is your house looks like the movie Trolls threw up on it.
Yeah, it's
A little bit.
I saw this somewhere. It said like glitter is the herpes of craft supplies.
Like having. It's funny you mentioned Trolls.
Everywhere.
It's funny you mentioned Trolls, Tony, because like we tried to like pre-watch that film to see if my oldest daughter would like it. And we got like 5 minutes into it, or not even like a minute into it, and we're like, oh no, this is not for most children, especially not our daughter.
Yep.
And I'm like, the things that pass for kids movies today blow my mind.
Yep. You're so right.
Like we watched The Secret Life of Pets. What a horrible film for children. It's basically about a rabbit who wants to eliminate humankind from the planet.
Yeah.
How is this a children's movie?
Dude, go back and watch some of the old Disney movies. Like watch Dumbo. About halfway through, you get like the trippiest thing it's psychedelic for 15 minutes. It's like, what is happening?
Yeah, I vaguely remember some of that, but
yeah,
it's just like I'm sure that most of this kind of stuff is just well over the kid's head. But
yeah,
I mean, we've been stuck in Frozen and Tangled for like a year.
Yeah,
poor person.
Yeah, well, if it doesn't give my kids nightmares, I will take it.
Yeah, Moana's pretty good. We kind of like Moana, but
I've seen that one yet.
Yeah. The Disney movie theme though at the beginning is it's just the parents die. I mean that's the whole every single one of them, the adult or like Bambi, the mom, whatever. But yeah, they all start that way.
Tony killed Bambi's mother with his rifle and the gun rack in the back.
Wow. Tony, at some point we're gonna have to get into what you have in there.
Yeah, maybe we can talk privately. I don't know if we'll do that on the podcast.
Okay.
See, whereas Tony's the gun guy on the show, I am more like Wayne from Wayne's World, where I don't even have a gun, let alone many guns that would necessitate an entire rack.
Sure.
So, Aaron, tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us about what you do, how you got to where you are today. Where did you start out? How did you fall into this business of computers and IT and technology and all that kind of good stuff?
Yeah. Okay. So the question there is, how far back do I go?
Start at the very beginning.
The very beginning. I can remember typing class in middle school. Thought that was just awesome.
Was it on actual computers or was it on like typewriters?
Yeah. No. It was on actual computers. I'm technically a millennial as much as I push back on that. I don't think I've ever actually touched a typewriter.
Okay.
No. I just remember being fascinated by that, and you could kind of see the potential there, right? This is like before the internet was really a thing, right? It was this little application in my, I want to say like 6th grade classroom. I mean, we had computers in 4th grade, I remember. We played things like, I think it was the first edition of Oregon Trail. That's like the first memory I have of computers. Did
you die of dysentery?
Yeah, many times. And then I would be like, man, this is incredible. And I'd come home and my dad had a laptop, and it was, I don't even remember anything about it other than I basically had I don't know what it was that he was giving me, but it was basically it looked like a command prompt. I mean, it was just a black screen, and I was just typing green letters all day long and just like working on typing, et cetera, et cetera. So fascination kind of started with that. And then I was a huge fan of like music is just, I don't know, a big part of who I am and my life. And what happened with the internet, I don't even really need to get into it. Your audience is very aware of it, as far as MP3s and all that kind of stuff. I can remember in probably 7th or 8th grade, figuring that game out. And so that got me learning more and more. What? Yeah. Naps, like the likes of Napster, et cetera.
Yeah. And MP3s and music was like the training ground for so many sysadmins.
Yeah. So I would say that's kind of the beginning of the end for me. So that was just always a passion, or not a passion, but I guess a hobby, right? And I was building my MP3 library and all that kind of stuff. I've only recently, maybe 3 years ago, kind of since I like kind of walked away from my MP3 library, and I just use streaming services now. But gosh, I used to spend time like organizing and figuring out exactly how I wanted the naming schemes and how I wanted things sorted and how I was going to store everything.
Mhm.
Ridiculous time
Yeah.
consumption.
I tried to do that so many times, and after a while, I'm just like, this is stupid.
Yeah.
And normalizing the audio, MP3 gain,
Yeah.
tag and rename.
Yes. Yeah. Do you remember Winamp?
Oh yeah, it kicks the llama's ass.
Yeah, exactly. All that stuff. And then in college, I had a couple different jobs. I tried to get into the IT department in college. I had a friend that did it. I didn't know that at the time, but maybe if he had gotten fired, I would have gotten the job. But it ended up working out. So I worked at the gym, and then I worked at what they called the Alumni Outreach Program at the university. And basically, I was calling alumni all the time to try to sell them on why they should support the university.
Boosters, yes.
And a friend, yeah, exactly. And a friend of mine there knew somebody at Dell, and that person at Dell was recruiting my friend and said, "Hey, you can work phones, you can talk to people. Maybe you want to come sell servers. So hey, why don't you come apply?" And that was the best thing I had going for me. It was, this was in Oklahoma City, where one of the Dell facilities are. They've got 3 call centers: Round Rock, Oklahoma City, and Nashville. And I was in Oklahoma at the time. And it was the best option I had in front of me. Michael Dell came to town right before or right after I applied. I can't remember. I thought that was really cool that he came and actually spent time there, and got to listen to him speak for, I don't know, an hour and a half or something like that. And I really liked what he had to say and respected him. And my only other options were like selling insurance or, I don't know. I had an economics degree, so I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do with that, but I was fascinated by how all that stuff worked. So I started selling servers in 2006, and what's interesting, it just kind of like I propelled through that. Within a couple years, I was basically at the highest end that you could be inside the call center, and it's not because I was smarter or anything from that perspective. It was just the fact that I was I maybe I cared about it or pushed myself, right? And I'm a super competitive person as well. And so with this whole like selling, did I just mute myself?
No,
You're good.
Okay, perfect. Selling these servers to SMBs that were calling online, they were just like, hey, I'm trying to spin up a SQL app. I need help, designing a RAID config for protection or whatever. And I'm working around all these other people that would rather go outside and take a smoke break. And you took turns as the calls came in, right? And so I would take their calls, and it was easy money because then every single month I was hitting 180+% of my quota only because I was taking their calls, right?
Oh, that's awesome.
And it just got addicting, and I was getting paid more for it. And so I just became one of the higher end server specialists. And I was like, man, okay, so the more I know about this, the more I can, help a customer, I can explain to them and I can get them into bigger, badder things. And then I learned about storage area networks. And that's when I was like, oh man, so getting into storage design seems really cool, really complex, fun, unique challenges. So then I switched over to that. And then by the end of 2009, I was the senior subject matter expert for selling storage, which at the time was EMC, and Equalogic as well, because they had bought Equalogic in February of 2008. So that's when the Dell EMC rift started to happen, right? When Dell bought Equalogic, EMC didn't really like that, and there was a lot of tension there. So we can dive into that if you want some explanation on that, but. And that was kind of it. I became just an expert in storage area networks. In about 4 years, I felt like I knew everything there was to know. I constantly kind of doubted myself because there was all this older technology that I didn't really understand. But technology was changing so fast.
Yeah.
So as soon as I started to realize that, I was like, man, I can quickly become an expert because there's all this new stuff that's coming at us. So, and then the only difference from there is I decided, okay, I don't want to do this in a call center anymore. I want to go do this on site at customer locations. So in 2010, I went out into the field as a systems engineer or systems consultant, sometimes they're called, for a VAR, and just had a blast doing it. And then ended up getting an offer to come back to Dell I went to let me get this right. I think it was a Dell VAR that I was trying to introduce EMC portfolio into. And then I went back to Dell and we were selling EqualLogic and Compellent. And then I went to another VAR that was Dell and I was trying to introduce EMC storage into it. And then I left that VAR and went to EMC. And then Dell bought EMC. So here I am. So there's some finer details and more steps along the way there,
of course,
that's the gist of it. So I've always been at a manufacturer or at a VAR. I've never actually been at a customer. That's something I kind of wish that I had. Both of you guys have that experience. You guys actually have walked the walk, right? Whereas I just talk the talk and pretend every day, right? Y'all have been behind the keyboards and done it all.
Yeah, well, and it's a bittersweet probably place to be. I mean, you know, as Tony can attest to, you know, sometimes your experience with VARs and other things doesn't always go the way you want it to, and you end up having to make up for their failings.
Yeah, for sure. But I always wish that I had been a customer, that I had that aspect of it.
Yeah.
And at this point, it doesn't make sense for me to do that.
Yeah.
But the people that I've worked with, yeah, exactly. The people that I've worked with in the past, that have come into the manufacturer side or the VAR side that have come from customers, I've seen them be the most successful, just in my experience. So they can sit across the table from a customer and say, hey, I've been there. I understand. Whereas I have to assume, but I've heard enough of it now over, however, 12 years. So I can safely assume.
Mm-hmm. Tony, do you have a question?
Not right at
Did I put you to sleep with my?
I was trying to lead you in there.
Background there.
I see where you're trying to.
It's too easy for me to just dominate the whole discussion, so I'm trying to,
Yeah. So we're continuing our series on HCI with obviously VxRail, VxRack. So what is your solution and what do you sell currently?
Yeah. So my solution
in 5 minutes or less.
Yeah. I'll give it to you in 5 seconds. Basically, it's just the easiest route to consume VMware software stacks on a ready-made appliance or rack scale solution. That's really all it is. So.
Okay, so for somewhat brain dead people like myself, what does that really mean?
Yeah, so a lot of, you're familiar with VMware and VMware products, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so software-defined compute, vSphere, software-defined networking. I think I saw on your, I still have things to learn about you, but it looks like you know a little bit about NSX.
I'm trying.
Yeah, so you'll have a great conversation with Tim, and you guys would be able to talk circles around me from a software-defined networking. I can say the words microsegmentation, so that's more than most, but so,
I'm just trying to break you out of your marketing speak. That's what I'm trying to do here.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, that's fine. I try to not be as marketing speak as possible. I want to shoot you straight, but really all it means is there's these software titles that you can acquire from VMware, and you have some different options on how you consume it. Right? You can consume it on, and again, we're talking about HCI platforms, right? I know that VMware does other things on 3-tier storage type things. But you can go and acquire those pieces of software and build it out on your own servers, or you can just go to us and say, hey, I want to buy a solution that whenever I walk up to it, it's already ready to deploy VMs or ready to deploy workload domains. And then you guys are managing the known good state of that software, right? So I don't have to think about the hardware compatibility list. I don't have to think about firmware, BIOS updating, all that kind of stuff. I just click a button and then it goes to the next iteration. It's just an easy button for consuming vSphere things.
Okay. So I guess, as I mentioned at the outset, our last conversation was with Andre from Datrium.
Mm-hmm.
So where do you guys see them, and where do you kind of see VxRail and Rack, and how those two kind of, come against each other or work with each other? Is it something that you can, Datrium is a software solution, so you could probably run it on Rail, but I don't know that you would.
Yeah, I'm a little bit confused, and maybe you guys can educate me on it. I don't actually run into Datrium that often. The customers that I talk to are VMware vSphere customers that are trying to figure out how they want to consume VMware products.
Okay.
Right. So sometimes it's, hey, should I build it on my own? Should I buy a solution where you guys are simplifying it for us? Or should I consume it on some other type of platform? There's other hyper-converged platforms, like Nutanix is a big one, where they will offer you the ability to run vSphere. Now, they run other things. They'll do other SDN and SDS things, but you have the capability of running vSphere on it, right? So customers have some different paths from that perspective. I have yet to run into anybody that has even said the word Datrium. Honestly, you're the first person.
Wow.
Right? I've heard some, so I've seen things in the news, and I've heard some VARs that I've talked to. A good buddy of mine is heavy into hyperconvergence, everything, kind of all over the place, and he was making some comments around, they're even, and I don't want to misrepresent them at all, but they have said, I guess, something along the lines of like they're the next step beyond hyperconvergence. So that's something I'd like to understand from a Datrium perspective.
Yeah, that's sort of the nutshell of what we kind of tried to get from them.
Yeah, I heard, and if I Google it right now, it says hyperconverged is old news. So, but I don't really understand what they're about.
Well, when we
Go back and listen to our last episode because he actually explained it. We pulled it out of him.
I will.
And he actually kind of because both Tony and I were in your shoes before we talked to Andre last time. We had no idea what they did.
Yeah.
So it worked. It helped both of us kind of like fully get it. Like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I mean, in a nutshell, I mean they basically are like a plug-in storage provider, on hardware. So it runs on any hardware. They just sort of take over and they have like preset settings for how the storage is configured, I guess.
Okay. And then it works with any hypervisor or
cross platform.
Yeah.
It's a mixture of hyperconverged and also, they probably wouldn't let me sing this, but also a little bit of traditional SAN in there as well with the data node they call it.
Oh, okay. So they do storage only nodes.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah, I'll absolutely look into it. I'd like to learn as much as I possibly can. But I mean, just being frank, I never see. I've seen them at a couple VMUGs in the past, and I have a friend that I used to work with at Dell that was over there that I ran into in an airport once. Other than that, I don't.
All right.
But maybe I just don't compete. Maybe it's not the same thing. But I have another theory too. Or go ahead. You were gonna say something?
No, go ahead.
I have another theory about hyperconvergence, right? So it really is. It's like, I don't know how well this analogy works, but I kind of imagine all of the hyperconverged players in the same boat, and we're in the middle of the ocean, and maybe the boat is just like so big that we're all like on different areas of the boat, and there's a billion fish in the ocean, and we're all just having a heyday, like just pulling hundreds of millions of dollars worth of fish out of the ocean.
Nice.
I never even cross lines with another guy, but Datrium might be fishing right next to me. I don't even know.
It's possible, yeah.
Yeah. So when
I like the analogy.
Yeah. So when you hear about like, I don't know if you heard vSAN's numbers. They have the most customers from a software-defined storage platform, and they said we have 14,000 customers. Mm-hmm. If you compare that to the number of vSphere customers, there's over 500,000, which means they have 2.5% market share of just vSphere customers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's just one hypervisor. And then you have all these other players out there that are not even focused just on vSphere customers, but all these other hypervisors. So the market adoption is still like if gosh, what is that curve called? I'll probably think of it here in a minute. But it's basically an adoption curve. We're still in the
bell curve.
Yeah, there's a law of diffusion. I got it. It's the law of diffusion of innovation is what it is.
Yeah.
And they have it kind of segmented. We're still like right at the beginning of the ramp.
Yeah, the early adopter period, and then
exactly,
peak.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, bleeding edge peak.
Yeah, exactly. And then the late adopters who'll get on HCI in 2025 or something like that.
That's the government,
right?
Yeah. No, I ran into a guy at VMworld last year during the V Golf outing. He works for the Department of the Treasury, And so I was talking to him while we're golfing about, vSphere and what they use. And I'm like, oh yeah, do you guys do anything with NSX? And he's just like, psh. Like, the government is about 9 years behind the rest of the industry.
We do actually have some government customers. I'll say it's probably, in my personal experience, it's probably going to be the customers in Arkansas or maybe South Carolina that are last. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's just.
But it was not reassuring at all, though, to hear that the Treasury Department is light years behind the rest of the world.
Yeah. I don't know if I can name the federal customers we have, but we do have several of them, and it's not even just U.S. federal customers. We have some military customers for other countries as well.
So I know
anyway.
the little bit that I know about what VxRail and VxRack is. Basically, VxRail is like a per node device, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And rack is basically you want a whole bunch of nodes, and so
so
rack, right?
Yeah,
that's the general definition of between the two.
Exactly. There's like a little bit of a software difference as well. So it's basically kind of a maturity model, right? So customers, if you think about kind of starting in the lower left from a maturity model perspective, they think, okay, I'm virtualized from a compute perspective, and I want to virtualize my storage. So I'm going to enable vSAN, which is just part of vSphere. It's in the code, right? And I'm going to buy some servers that are referred to as vSAN ready nodes. That's like the lowest end if I'm just going to dip my toes into this along the maturity model, right? So they build your own is what it's called. And then what we talked about from the known good state, if they want vSphere plus vSAN delivered on a server, it's just and we have a couple of different model types, right? A 1U, one node, or 2U, one node, or a 2U, 4 node box. It's just different ways of consuming either CPU, RAM, or storage, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
But you get a box that's basically appliance-ized, you can say it like that. Now, again, there's still some build your own to that too, right? From a network perspective, it comes with services to set it up, but it's a bring your own network solution. Now, imagine you wanted a solution where the rack comes in and the doors fall off and you're ready to go, and you wanted that to also include software-defined networking, NSX, which I will talk about next month with Tim. And you want it to be able to deploy workload domains instead of just deploying VMs. So whenever you're operating on VxRail, you're in vCenter and you're just deploying VMs. Okay, VMware Cloud Foundation includes the full stack of VMware software. So the compute, network, and storage, plus vRealize suite optionally. But it also has this thing called SDDC Manager, which helps you lifecycle all those things, those pieces of software. And additionally, it allows you to say, okay, I'm going to spin up, a 400 VDI workload domain. So you tell it, this is the performance I want, this is the capacity I want, this is the protection I want, go and do it. And it'll go within the rack system. If you have one rack or two or 8, whatever it is, it'll find nodes that aren't being used, and it'll put them in a cluster and deploy a workload domain for you and connect it to vCenter and all that kind of fun stuff. So you're ready to go. It just automates all that.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of along that maturity model. And then if you think about, the farthest up to the right would be like VMware Cloud on AWS, right? Where you don't even have any infrastructure. It's all automated. You're just deploying on somebody else's infrastructure and platform.
Yeah. So with Rail, and with all of it, I mean, do you if you're integrating a storage product, do you have to use vSAN, or does VxRail do its own storage management?
Yeah, it's vSAN only.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, it's only vSphere things.
Okay.
Yep.
So how does that work from a one node perspective if you're looking at VxRail? Because you're using vSAN for backend, but technically vSAN doesn't support single nodes. So how does that?
You can't do one node. Yeah, the minimum for vSAN is 2 node, and then you have a witness elsewhere.
Yep.
It doesn't really matter where it is, but it has to be outside of those 2 nodes. And then the minimum today for VxRail is 3 nodes to start.
Okay.
It used to be 4 nodes to start. Now we made it 3 nodes, and it's on the roadmap for us to deploy with 2 nodes. So
is that kind of getting you more in line with the standard vSAN 2-node direct connect model?
Yes, that's exactly what it would be.
Okay.
It's going to be 2-node direct connect. So, but I make no promises on dates or anything from that perspective.
Of course not.
I think if
So
marketing
it's
exists, they might stab me. But yeah,
it's
that's the idea.
coming though.
Yeah.
All right.
Yep. Yeah. There's way too many massive customers that are demanding it, and the use cases have just been proven to be there, that they want it. So there's just some interesting things we have to solve for, mostly around the witness. Right.
And when you're delving into the VxRail VxRack program, you're also 100% pretty much turnkey, right? In terms of you've got HCI validated hardware, everything's going to work right out of the box, right?
Correct. Yeah. So there's a lot of engineering efforts on our side that go above and beyond what the hardware compatibility list guide for vSAN Ready Node is.
Okay.
We do a lot of additional checks. We try to offer the things that make the most sense for a customer and are going to cause them the least opportunity to hurt themselves.
Yep.
If that makes sense, right? So we're going to have a limited set of offerings when compared to build your own, but it's designed to be optimized and easy and best performance and quality and all that kind of stuff, which is why we, to this point, haven't done the 2-node thing.
Yeah,
right?
and it's something that I've heard a little bit on the back end of some people running that system. They like the stability. They like that everything's extra checked on the back end to make sure everything's good.
Mm-hmm.
Some people that like to be bleeding edge are a little bit frustrated by it. So obviously you can't be on a vSphere release. So what kind of projection do you guys have as a general rule for releases?
Yeah. So I think there's actually a couple of things to tease apart right there. When you talk about being on the bleeding edge, there's going to be certain things that you'll be able to do from a build your own perspective that you may never be able to do in an appliance version where somebody just kind of wants to consume something that's more locked down or guaranteed. But that's just a decision you have to make within your own IT department, right? And who am I to say that one way is better than the other? But I think the question you're getting at is like when VMware releases 6.7 and it's not out on VxRail, right?
Exactly.
So that's another thing that we have, and you guys are doing great by putting me on the hot seat as far as roadmap things. I'm really hoping my marketing team and all that. I'm hoping that a lot of people hear this, but not anybody that's in my business unit. I don't know how much I'm supposed to be talking about futures, but I don't think it's any secret that that our goal is there's an internal phrase called sim ship, so simultaneous shipping. It's just getting to the point where because as it stands today, we don't release
one release behind or
on the So I'll walk you through how it is right now. So we don't release with the .0 and .5. So the major releases we just skip. When the .1s come out, so 6.7.1 was supposed to come out in August, and then it got pushed 40 days. It's going to come out October 4th. That'll be released the same day on VxRail, right?
Okay.
And there's a lot of things that we discover in that process that goes back to VMware. Well, I say back to VMware. It's actually a co-engineered product, right? So VMware and Dell EMC are working on this together. Sure. They're working through 6.7. They find bugs. They fix the bugs. It gets put in the update 1 patch. And then when that releases, it's going to release the same day on Rail. What the directive for us, though, is to get to where we are releasing on the majors. And again, highlight all this stuff with an asterisk because this is roadmap things. And just telling you what I know. But when the majors come out, we're going to commit to something like 30 days after is when it'll come out on Rail or Rack SDDC, right?
That's actually pretty good.
So yeah, and the reality of the situation too is on those major releases, the .0s and .5s, there's not a whole lot of customers that go straight to it right away. Usually they do some internal testing, and then maybe by the update 1 is when they roll the major to production. But yeah, there's been a clear directive from our leadership that says we want you to get as close to real time on this as possible. And I think what we're settling on is about 30 days after.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that given the choice between bleeding edge and stability, in terms of an enterprise, you're going to want to be on the stability side, right? That makes complete sense for your business continuity. But vSAN being a new product and constantly being improved, and I've had a lot of personal experience with it myself, it's a newer product, but they're constantly improving it, and you always want that new features. Like, oh man, I really wish I had this, but I'm lagging behind because I'm on VxRail. But
yeah, no, that's a fair question.
Caveats on both sides of that, I guess.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a fair question. And I think that's why the directive, I can look at our roadmap and say the vast majority of everything that's on here that we're working through is requests from customers. And that's what's so cool about it. And what gives me some pride in our business unit. Not that there's only a few things that do that, but that we're actually working on things that customers are requesting and care about. Our initial out of the gate concern was quality, right? So we said, okay, we're going to slow down releases. We're going to slow down all this stuff so that we can harden and guarantee and provide optimal quality.
Awesome.
But then from there, it was like, okay, vSAN is getting to where, and Rail is getting to where we've got these quality standards. And like you said, they're starting to solve for a whole lot of problems, and getting to those releases a lot faster is what customers want. So
I think this is sort of the, like, staying current on software, though, is like the holy grail of system administration.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody gets there. I mean, this is why everybody's freaking out about the end of support for 5.5.
Yeah.
Because nobody wants to change anything.
Right.
I mean, I always liken it to,
don't fix it.
yeah, I liken it to, everybody likes to treat their server infrastructure like it's a furnace. You install it and then you don't touch it for 30 years. And, I mean, I run into this on projects that I work for clients all the time, where, they have just stuff that is not even patched. And I mean, it works and it gets the business done. But, all you can try to do is basically talk to scare them into upgrading with, security flaws. And sometimes that works, but most of the time they'll deal with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But so here's a question that I have for you, Aaron. I have a client currently. They're a small business. It's like a, construction company, commercial construction company. They build big hotels and stuff like that. They have maybe 50, 60 people in the office, so they do general contracting, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So they have a really small rack today. Basically, they're running on like vSphere Essentials Plus.
Okay.
And they have an old NetApp that is now 5 years old, so it's end of life. And I'm working with their IT consultant, who's their primary, person.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sort of his like VMware expert backup. So I'm trying to help them re-engineer what they need for infrastructure. And, with the way, HCI is going and how big it's becoming in the industry, I feel like, if there was a really good play for HCI, it might be good for these guys. Like they don't really need like mountains and mountains of compute, because they're just not doing it. The biggest thing they have is a couple of applications that do SQL databases.
Yeah. How many servers are they running right now?
3.
Yeah. There you go.
And it's
so the base of, I mean, if I'm guessing where the question is going, the low end of VxRail should have them covered.
Okay.
But
and then like, in terms of this like CPU count, even on those base levels, is it 1 per?
Yeah, host? You can do single or dual socket.
Okay.
Yeah. So you've got some options there. For that, I would say if they're operating on, you said the NetApp was 5 years old. I don't know if the servers are 5 years old. If they're running happily on 3 servers that are 5 years old, I'd say single socket 3 servers would be enough.
More than enough, probably.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I mean, that would keep some of their licensing costs down as well. But
and that's like ultimately like the problem with these guys is, like you throw in front of them a $100,000 bill for IT infrastructure, and they're builders, right?
Yeah.
They say, well, man, for that I can go buy a backhoe or a dump truck or a forklift,
a tool that earns me money.
Yeah. And but at the same time, they don't make the connection of, well, yeah, but go try and bid a job and do the actual work to plan the job without all your IT infrastructure.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the same thing.
Yep.
So it's that kind of constant dance of trying to explain, like, just because it's not this giant physical asset, because it sits in a rack in your office, it's actually more valuable than the tool.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Well, I mean, and again, I don't want to sit here and sound like a fool and tell you that VxRail is the right answer for them right out of the gate. You know, there's more questions I would have. But I mean, if they're 100% VMware environment, being that small, I'd say it's definitely worth a look. If they're not a VMware environment at all, then I would, you know, it sounds like you're their VMware
it's
admin.
Essentials. It's Essentials Plus. So
Yeah.
it is there. But
yeah, worth looking at, man. Go through
All
the
right.
sizing tool and get a low end node east. Like
so I didn't know there was a sizing tool. So what is
Yeah.
it? How do I find that?
There is, so I know how I find it internally. And it should be, I don't know are you a Dell EMC partner?
I am not.
Okay.
I'm a VMware partner. That's
okay.
Close as
So you
I
can
get.
go through the vSAN sizing tool. It'll give you a little bit different suggestions, but it'll be roughly the same thing. I can also just send you the sizing spreadsheet. I think I don't know that it's NDA required.
Okay.
I'm trying to get to some point in my career where somebody slaps me on the hand for talking too much or handing out tools too much, because I haven't quite hit it yet, and I always feel like I'm kind of walking the line. But
well, we're all about helping out our fellow IT community people here. So
yeah, exactly.
Just say, hey, I was just trying to help the community.
Yeah, it's just a spreadsheet, man. Come on.
I found an advisor website. I don't know. This does not look like it's Dell EMC sanctioned, though. It's mainstayadvisor.com.
Maybe.
Go.
All right. Well, we'll
I'll
look
it
for
up.
that.
Yeah,
So-
we'll come back.
So I heard somebody on the V Speaking podcast, must be one of your counterparts, on another episode, talking about VxRail has some sort of a OpEx model where you pay for what you use and you can return it after 12 months.
Yeah. So that's
What is that?
Cloudflex thing. And again, so just to give you my perspective, I'm within the business unit. And I run the team that's the subject matter experts on the products, not necessarily pricing. And I don't deal with customers from a pricing perspective. But as I understand it, I don't know all the ins and outs of it, but basically you sign up and you have a monthly payment for the size of the cluster that you have. And then after 12 months, that monthly payment starts to go down, and you can just decide I don't want this gear anymore at any point, and then return it and your monthly payment stops. So it's just a different operating model.
But it is actually physically in your environment. It's not like you're subscribing to AWS or something.
Yeah, it's in your environment.
Weird.
Yeah. I think the pricing team in our BU is kicking around some other ideas, because the way you describe it kind of can be misleading as far as, and I'm not saying you're describing it wrong. I think that's the way it's presented currently within that model, because really you're paying for, in some manner of financing the size of the servers that you bought, right? The CPU, RAM, and storage there. I think we're actually considering a model where you get some subset of infrastructure that provides at least what you want, and then you literally pay for how much CPU, RAM, and storage you are consuming. I think it sounds like they're considering that as well. So
I mean, the only way that I've run into that type of a deal before is back when Nimble was Nimble. They had a model for that where you could basically buy an array from them on a monthly fee, and then like every 6 months or something, they'd do a bill true up and charge you based on the amount of data you were using. Yeah.
Was that successful?
I have no idea. I would think HP's probably killed it by now, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean,
I haven't seen too many hardware vendors do that, and I think we're just kind of kicking around with some ideas to try to make it as cloud-like consumption as possible for on-prem infrastructure.
Because this is the constant fight that guys like Tony and I are doing, where we're supporting really small infrastructure.
Yeah,
we're not supporting racks and racks and racks of 500 servers.
Oh, I get it, man. I do the same. Or go ahead. Sorry,
but we get fed these lines at meetings and at VMworld and everything about how all of this great stuff for enterprise is the answer for everybody, even the small business guy.
Even
Yeah.
if you got $10 million laying around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know, like, and I get, you know, brushed off even by my brother who works for VMware that, you know, oh, you complain about price too much. But as a partner, that's all I hear is,
Yeah.
oh, it's too expensive.
I
You know,
get
we
it, man.
can't-
I've been there.
We can't buy NSX. What? It's too expensive.
Yeah.
And like, you know, I've had conversations with customers who want to buy NSX,
Yeah.
but until their company is breached or somebody else in their close by industry is breached, they won't even darken the door of it.
Yeah. That's the plight of SMB, man.
And it's just like, you know, and I always kind of say, I'm just like, you know, just give, if IT companies could give small businesses just a little bit of more of a breadcrumb.
Yeah.
And even if you're, you know, if you're breaking even on it on the transaction or whatever, at some point, assuming that business goes right, it will come back to you.
Yeah. You're talking about crack dealers. That's what you're talking about. Give them a little bit. They get hooked, right? That's what it is. And I get it. I hear conversations like that all the time. Like somebody was saying, how do we offer like a minimalized config of NSX, which is really hard to do. And you guys can ask Tim that next week. See what he would suggest from that perspective, right? From a vSAN perspective, it would just be a build your own on 2 or 3 nodes. Just to try to get into it, right? Not necessarily in production on an automated system, et cetera, but just to like try to dip your toes into it and move some applications to it, maybe not your business critical applications right out of the gate, get more familiar with it, et cetera. You kind of have to think outside the box, I think, to get to
that's sort of the rub though, is Tony did that. He did a build your own vSAN.
Yeah.
And it's blown up in his face a few times, right?
Yeah.
So that's where, like, you know, you guys in your big industries who are really good at building these, you know, appliance-sized systems, that would just change the world for so many small business admins, because we have 50 hats to wear.
Yeah.
We're the security guys. We're the networking guys. We're the WAN guy. We're the VPN guy. We're the I don't know how to open my email guy.
Yeah.
And if we have to like try to now
printer guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if we have to suddenly now
be
virtualized storage experts, forget about it.
Yeah, I think it'll get there. I think what you have to realize too is, again, this is really new. Rail is really new. And the business of what we are and what we do has to be profitable for us to not die before we start to think about edge use cases as well.
Yeah.
Right. And I hate saying that the small mom and pop shop SMBs are edge use cases, but those use cases aren't going to present the margin that's going to drive the business forward to create new solutions, et cetera. You know what I mean? It's almost like what happened with Tesla, where Tesla came out with the Roadster, right? Which was and Elon even talked about this. Like, you bought my first car overpriced to help pay for the design of this car, which was less overpriced to help pay for this car. And then the Model 3 is the car for modern, you know, the modern human, right? Or the modern man,
mass
whatever
market.
you want. Mass market. That's what I'm trying to find out.
But even Elon in that case, I mean, he had to go hat in hand back to the original owners of the original, you know, Roadster and say, I didn't charge you enough. You need to pay me more.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they all did it.
Yeah. But that's what I see from a business perspective. You know, I 100% get it though, man. I get it. I think it's just going to be.
This is the theme of the show, is we just constantly complain about how we're the Rodney Dangerfield of IT.
It's okay.
We get no respect.
It's okay. I 100% get it, man. I started in SMB. I spent my first, 3-4 years focused just in SMB, designing servers for those solutions, right?
See, and it's actually worse for us up in the Midwest here because like our budgets are even that much tighter.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
dude, I can't tell you how many configs I did of servers in 2006, 2007, where we then went to the Dell outlet to see if we could find something that was even close to that design on an outlet, like on a used server. You know what I mean? Yeah. You're laughing. I can see because it's
because like for like the last 6 years of my career, I've kept multiple businesses running off of the CDW outlet.
Yeah, that's right. Dude, CDW, I remember back then, it may still be the same, but we always used to go there to search for parts because their search tools were just incredibly efficient and optimized. It was funny. But
a couple of weeks ago, I was at the Minneapolis UserCon, and I was giving a presentation on vSAN with Jace. And one of the guys came up to me after the prezo was over, and he's like, "Yeah, man, how do you like your vSAN?" And he's like, "You did build your own, right?" And yeah. He's like, "Well, we had VxRail VxRail quoted to us, and it was just really expensive." I'm like, "Well, how much did they quote?" I'm not going to say the number here, but he's like, he gave me the number. I'm like, "That's not bad."
sure.
I said,
Depending on the config, sure.
yeah, I said, based on my experience with Roll Your Own, I would do that for the stability and the HCL guarantees, and some of the headaches that I've run into being avoided.
Yeah, and I appreciate you saying that. And I'm not trying to pile on or add more of a commercial. I'd love to talk to you guys about what y'all have going on in the background and just kind of laugh about that. But you're too right. Like a lot of the customers that we have come to us after trying to build it on their own. It's the same thing that happens when I'm working in my backyard, and I'm trying to build a fence or whatever, and I totally screw it up because I'm not a fence builder. And I call somebody, and they come out and they help me with what I've now jacked up. But yeah, I mean, it's just been, there was a customer just last week I was presenting to, and they said, "Hey, we've built it on our own, and we did a drive firmware upgrade or something like that, and then it took down our data store." And I'm not trying to say that because like to strike fear or whatever, but you just have to be careful, because if you aren't closely following exactly what you're supposed to do, you could introduce errors and drive down uptime from that perspective.
Yeah,
so.
and in my defense, I've been following everything by the book, doing all the research I can. Our partners have failed us, and it's literally between me and engineers at my hardware partner and VMware trying to figure this out. So there's some weird firmware issue that we're running into where we're dropping SSD disk groups out of vSAN.
Mm-hmm.
And
well, even imagine it worked perfectly.
Yeah,
you're still going by the book, which means you're spending time reading through those things and making sure stuff matches up. We've even had customers that they haven't had problems with it. It's all been great, but they're just tired of spending days going through it or weeks going through it.
Oh yeah, it's a time suck for sure. All the research and everything.
Yeah. So tell me what you've printed on that 3D printer back there. I'm just dying to know about your background. Like you're literally physically what's in the background of where you're at. And I won't ask you about the gun cannon.
We'll take a 5-minute technical talk interlude.
Quick little diversion break. It's a Bewley break.
Well, I don't want to. I mean, as much as I want to answer your questions about VxRail, I don't want to seem like I'm just like beating a dead horse too. I want to help you. I want to answer your questions, but.
So I've printed lots of various things around the house. Well, you're a fellow DJI Mavic drone.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, love it, man.
I printed a lot of stuff for my drone on there.
Like what? What would you print?
Well, I happen to have my drone right here. There's a lot of things that I wanted, like on
like side missile attachments, or
yeah. No, just little accessories that
Where's did you print like a pizza delivery sleeve?
Oh,
there you go.
So this, I don't know if you can see it very well. This is a camera lens hood to stop sun glare hitting the lens.
Oh yeah.
So I printed that. I printed extended landing gear on the bottom of the.
Oh, that's crazy.
To keep the props and everything and the camera out of the dirt.
Yeah. There's certain areas I can't land or take off because it's too close. It's just in the grass or something.
Yep. And this one might be kind of hard to see unless I take it off, but there's a little remove before flight thing that covers the bottom ultrasonic and camera sensors in the bottom there.
Yeah.
It snaps right in to protect that gear
just
when it's
keep
not
them clean.
Yep. And
are you finding these places or are you designing it?
I found them. They're all over Thingiverse.
Okay.
The controller, I kept worrying that I was going to snap a controller gimbal, and this little gizmo here keeps the joysticks all aligned.
Oh.
It kind of slips right over and keeps that protected, and then it protects
when it's in your bag, so you don't have to keep taking the joysticks off.
Well, I don't know if the joysticks come off on this model. Maybe they do.
What model do you have?
I've got the Mavic Pro.
Oh, okay. Yeah, mine twist off.
Maybe mine do too. I don't know if they're replaceable, but
I don't know. Don't try it. I don't want to be responsible for it.
yeah. So yeah, just various little things that I've seen people selling on Amazon for, $10, $20 a pop. I've been able to 3D print them and enhance the functionality of my drone without any extra expense, which is kind of nice.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Well, it helps that you got the printer for free.
Yes, it does.
So I don't actually have. Yeah, exactly. But they sit in here, and I'm sorry for those of y'all listening on the podcast, but the actual joysticks are inside, and then they pop out of the little holder, and you threw it in right there, right?
Yeah, that's definitely different than mine.
Yeah.
I've got that same design, but mine do not pop in there like that.
Gives you the opportunity to lose them too. Pros and cons for everything.
Yes, exactly.
All right, I'll ask you more questions later. Fire back at me.
So what kind of networking and transport are we looking at if we're looking at like a VxRail type scenario? I assume there's some sort of a top of rack switch. Is it 10 gig, 40 gig? What do you got there?
Cisco 9Ks, 10 gig and 40 gig. Yeah. So 10 gig rack to rack, I believe, and then 40 gig out. Networking is my weakest point. I'll just admit that to you right out of the gate. But it's Cisco 9Ks, and I think it's 40 gigs out of the top. Or I know that that's the fact. I don't know for sure if it's 10 gig. So it's 10 gig node to node within the rack. Mm-hmm. I don't know if it's 10 gig from Tor to Tor. Okay. You know what I mean? Or if that's a 40 gig connection. That's the one I'd have to check on.
Okay. And then what kind of options do you have in terms of the actual storage devices inside each node? Are we talking NVMe by default, SAS, SSDs? What kind of drives?
Yeah, so the big piece from a rack perspective is that those nodes are fully populated as it is today. I don't know when. I think that they're planning on giving you the option of half or partially populating those nodes. And as you may know, those nodes now, as of April 30th, are VxRail nodes. So it's all built. I was talking about that maturity model earlier on. The VxRail system, those nodes that are in there, is a subset of what you can design and build from a rail perspective, right? But the NVMe thing was a new announcement. You've got that capability from a cache drive perspective, the 800 and 1.6 terabyte gig drives, and then I don't think it's I don't think it's a secret, but I think maybe most people know, and you can edit this out if that's not necessary.
We don't edit anything.
Okay, you don't edit anything out. As I understand from a vSAN roadmap perspective, they're moving how they write to byte addressable, which will allow them to go away from cache and persistence tiers. Mm-hmm. It will all be one tier, and at that point, once they are byte addressable, it'll make sense to leverage NVMe throughout. At this point, it doesn't make sense to do that. It makes sense to use NVMe for the cache drive, the heavy, the write intensive area, yep. And then pull reads from that plus the persistence tier, which can be SAS or SATA SSD. But yeah, that's your options right now. And so for Rail, you can do an NVMe cache drive and a SAS or SATA SSD on the persistence tier. Okay. And then for rack, it's going to be a full node worth of storage.
Is there a hybrid option for spinning disks still or not?
There is, but it's like less than 2% buy it. Less than 2% of the nodes that go out the door are hybrid. So, and going back to the SMB thing, I know a lot of SMBs still buy hybrid. They still buy 1 gig, right? And right now when we're talking 10 gig or 25 gig from an NDC option, network daughter card, or add-ons, right? The conversations we're getting into, I'm hearing more requests for higher end than that. Like give me 100 gig. That was a conversation we had the other day, and we're just like,
wow.
Yeah, we don't have that. Do you feel like you need that? Do you need 100 gig out of every single node?
Is there a vendor that even does that yet?
So I don't know. We've had
years ago at VxRail, I saw a vendor that had 100 gig cards displayed on the wall.
Yeah. So we had a customer that was having some, I can't remember exactly what happened, but basically they had a node that was full of 25 gig, like just for a single node to communicate to another node. They had 3 different 25 gig daughter cards in there. So they had like 6 ports of 25 gig, which just is insane to me. I don't know. So seems like massive overkill at this point. But those are your options there from a node perspective.
I've got one more question on my architect timeline here before I turn it back over to Britton for some networking stuff. So how do you update the platform? I know I've seen some demos of the actual installation, and it's pretty easy. I don't want to insult anybody, but it seems like it's pretty idiot proof. Kind of walks you through
the installation.
Yeah,
it's super easy. So I can sum that up real quick for you, and then get to what you're asking there from an update perspective. But that happens within the VxRail manager.
Okay.
And it's basically just wizard driven, where you ask for IP addresses, host names, and passwords, and that's it. Like you're saying, it's just super easy. Additionally, for even the more maybe an easier route would be, you can have an IT department that prints off a JSON file off of an already configured version, or based on conversations that are had before the system even goes out. If this system is going to a location where they don't even have somebody there that can walk through that wizard and type IP addresses, they can just give them a file that they can click on and say, okay, here's the file. When it says, give it a file, this is your file, and that's it. And then you just hit go and it installs it. Otherwise, you just walk through 3-4 pages of IP addresses, host names, and passwords, and that's it. But from an update perspective, all that is done through VxRail Manager. The update is also done through VxRail Manager. And you just go to updates, and it says, okay, here's all the software versions that you're on that are tied to whatever this release code is, 4.5. whatever, 210 or whatever release you're on. Yes, there's an update available, and these are the next things in that update that you can go to. And then you just click update, and then you go to that update file, right? And then it updates the system for you from that perspective. And it's going to put one node in maintenance mode, update it, moving the VMs off of it before it goes down, obviously, right? Update that system, update all the software, put the VMs back on it, and go to the next node, etc.
Okay, I lied. I have one more question.
Okay, that's fine.
So everything at the top layer is obviously standard vSphere. But what do you have to do to get ready for an upgrade from a firmware and driver perspective? I assume drivers can be handled from your APIs that you're doing for your automation from the VxRail update system, but how does the back end, like your HBAs and all of the system NIC drivers, things like that, how are those handled? Yeah,
so it's all delivered in that package, that update that you download.
Oh, it does.
All the relevant drivers and everything is in that package that's relevant to your hardware and firmware and components.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, there's pieces in there that you aren't going to need if you don't have those things, but everything that you need is within that package. So
cool.
Another fun question I get sometimes is, what's the largest single VxRail cluster you've seen? I was talking with a customer the other day. They have a 48 node, right? And that's kind of large. And I don't want to. Whenever that conversation comes up, it turns into a bigger discussion of, should you even have a vSphere cluster that is that big? Why do Mr. or Mrs. Customer, why do you need to have a 48 node vSphere cluster? Most customers don't do that. It's going to be an 8, 16, 24 node cluster on the higher end. And then that vSphere can go up to 64 nodes per cluster. I've never met a customer that's had 64. I've been in a presentation where I said that, and somebody raised their hand and they said, my aunt's cousin's dog's neighbor has a 64 node cluster. That's the only time I've heard of that.
Hey, I was challenged by William Lamb on Twitter with his nested virtualization automation, and I pushed out a 64 node vSAN nested cluster.
Okay, I know a guy. There we go.
I did it.
Okay.
It ate up all of my RAM in my home lab, but I did.
I bet. But I bring that up just to kind of, there's a lot of people out there that are like, well, when we're talking HCI, this solution can go to thousands of nodes, right? Well, do you want a single cluster? I mean, there's a reason that vSphere doesn't support a 1,000 node cluster.
Right.
You have to think through some of those design parameters and why they're doing it that way and what it is that they're actually doing.
More is always better, right?
That's right. Food for thought.
Yeah. So, Aaron, full disclosure,
Yeah.
Everybody, has their own things that they like and that they gravitate towards in IT, just like everything else, right?
Yeah.
I've historically never really been that big of a fan of Dell hardware.
Okay. Luckily for you, there's options.
And I worked prior to going out on my own, I worked for a company and they had all Dell servers. And I was my question is does the updates on your stuff actually work? Because I was doing just routine firmware maintenance on some Dell servers in this case. And as I was applying the updates, it was applying a firmware update to the power supply, and it was like completely bricking the power supplies.
Okay. Yeah,
So
that's interesting.
I'm like, really, Dell? Really? You're going to release a firmware update to a power supply, and then it doesn't work anymore?
And it killed the power supply?
Completely. They had to overnight the new replacement units. And then all of a sudden, those ones automatically started wanting to like update. And I'm like, shoot,
nope.
I was like pulling the power cord out of the server to keep it from killing it again.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so I think that goes into some of the QA that we do, right? So if there is a firmware like that update to a power supply that happens, we're testing that, and we're not going to allow a firmware that goes through that's going to brick a power supply.
I would have thought that Dell would have done that as well.
Yeah, well, yes, yeah, you would think, right? And so, but even if you look at like what lands on the hardware compatibility list, those are best guesses too on the build your own, right? There's a little bit of testing that's done, and then some extrapolation that's pulled from that. That says, okay, well, if this works, then we assume that these three things will work. Let's move on to the next thing, right? So it's ride or die, focus on quality.
I love the Fast and Furious reference. That's great.
Yeah,
cool.
But so what is it then? You've never really been a Dell guy. You said is it HP servers or IBM or what are you doing?
I've always had knock on wood really really good luck with HP hardware.
Yeah. Okay. Usually that's what it is. It's usually either HP or Dell.
Yeah, and I've just had multiple occasions where that's what I put in, and they're still running to this day. Yeah, I've even had some where I haven't even had to replace a disk.
Yeah, well, that's why it's been a 2-horse race for ages. I mean, I don't even know how. I think 19, 20 years between HP and Dell.
Yeah.
And this is the first year, I believe, that we've been. Maybe there was one like 12 years ago or something, but there's this big hoopla at Dell right now because we're number one in server units and server revenue, right? And so usually it's either like HP will have number one in revenue and we'll be number one in units, or vice versa, or we won't have either. This is the first time for the past 2 quarters we've been number one in revenue and units. But anyway, my whole point is I was guessing you were going to say HP because it's typically you find a shop and they're either Dell or HP. Sometimes they're IBM, rarely, and then you'll run into the UCS fans too.
Yeah, no, your IBM or Lenovo begrudgingly, kind of like telling.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, man, no worries. Dude, you could say whatever you want. Like, I know you said full disclosure, and some people get riled up about this kind of crap.
That bugs me more than anything.
What? That people get riled up?
Well, yeah, that people basically they turn their IT preferences into religion. And, it's just all, like, oh, if you like this, then you're stupid.
Yeah.
Like, go back to middle school.
Well, I mean, I've got competitors, but it's like I see us all as like we're all teams in the NFL. I don't know if any of y'all or either if y'all are NFL fans, but like I'm a Cowboys fan, and my competitor is like the Eagles fan, right? Okay, yeah, fine. But I still have, like, if I just imagine myself as just as an NFL player, and you see this through the league, like the NFL players have mad respect for the other players. Like there's some beef between some guys on some teams, for sure.
It's a fraternity, right?
Yeah, but it's absolutely a fraternity, and you never know which team you might be playing on next year. I mean, same goes for the NBA or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm never going to sit here and dog a company just for being a different company, I mean, it's respect because we're all in the same game. And I may question the plays they're calling, right? but I still
Mhm.
respect the game that we're in, and
Yeah.
I may find myself over there trying to help them someday too. So
Well, and like occasionally I'll talk to people that are just getting into this as a career track, and I always try to tell people like, do as much as possible, avoid getting into a rut of technology following that you can't get yourself back out of.
yeah,
Like don't fall so in love with a product and be so championing that thing because 5 years it may not exist anymore.
exactly right. And you're
then
blind to the other things coming up next to you.
Yeah, and then you're going to be the guy in the room who's just like, well, this is better when we did it this way. And, everybody's just like, well, what are you even talking about? And it's so easy to fall into a thing of, well, these guys do everything perfect, but nobody does anything.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say exactly what you just said.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
we do our best, and we have our methods, and if you buy into our methods, if you agree, and we have a good relationship, and great.
And even like when NSX was first released, I jumped on full whole hog bandwagon. I'm just like, this is it. This is the next thing since ESXi.
Yeah,
I mean,
it is.
It's going to change the world, and then it's basically launched into the industry to the sound of crickets.
Yeah, I think it was when it launched. I think it was ahead of its time. In all honesty.
Well, I have a different take on it.
Okay.
I think that as a solution, and as what it's aimed for and what it does is it is truly groundbreaking. It's amazing stuff.
Yeah.
I think though with their enterprise focus, they're selling it, VMware typically sells to server guys. And the thing that you now have to get yourself into is network. The network guys and the server guys typically don't like each other. And
I'm nodding my head, by the way. Sorry. I forget that.
And all of a sudden now it's bridging these two industries of and this is the other thing that happens in IT circles is everybody likes to blame who's not in the room.
Yep.
It's always the network. You hear that, Tim?
It is always the network.
Yeah.
2 out of 3 IT people agree.
And it's just like, so the reason I think there's really low uptick on the adoption for it is just that. I mean, you're selling to the wrong audience.
Right.
You're preaching to the wrong choir. And I know I'm not a historian. I do not come from a networking background, but when I saw what this thing does and how you deploy stuff fully in software and how, as even from a small business end of things, it takes all of this hardware junk that I don't want to mess with anymore on a network and puts it in code that I can just deal with and blah, blah, blah. Boom. It was like a light bulb after a while. Just like the epiphany moment for me was I was sitting in the install, configure, manage class for NSX 6.1.
I've been through that. That's hard.
And
from a non-networking person.
I was on like day 3 or 4 of this class. And I'm just all of a sudden, I'm just like, wait a second. It's just networking and software.
Exactly.
That's it.
Yep.
And everybody's, like VMware's, technical presentations on it. It gets so deep into the weeds that everybody walks out confused and, their heads are spinning and I don't know what a VXLAN is. And, it's just, and so it's just, it's gone too far into the weeds of highly technical solutions, and it's selling to the wrong crowd.
Yep.
And the network guys who would be supporting this don't want to because they have to learn a whole new thing, even though it's really not. And so I think that's mostly the answer is wrong crowd.
There's a big shift coming, man. And there was a lot of pushback on this when initial server virtualization came along. And go try to sell software-defined storage to a storage admin that's managing external storage. Good luck.
And I think that's the other piece of this that I think, even with and I've said this before, and we've been talking to people all this adoption of, moving stuff into the public cloud or large, off-premise clouds. That's getting more and more and more, but I think it'll happen in greater numbers in 10, 15, 20 years as these old dyed-in-the-wool, IT managers start to retire.
Yep.
And they don't want to mess with that change. But the new guys coming out of school and the new kids coming out and learning all this stuff from the word go, all they know is cloud. It's going to be no big deal to them to just be like, oh, I'm just going to spin this up over here. Mm-hmm. And, nobody likes it when I say that because it sounds crass that, change is happening. Change is hindered.
It's true, though.
Change is hindered because people have a retirement that they're waiting for. But, that's really what most change comes down to. What that comes down to, I think, is it's just like it's a paycheck.
Yeah.
And if you change that, to quote South Park, they took your job.
That's right. Yep.
So
it's not all science. There's people involved ttoo.
And yeah, and then that's like, and I gave a VMUG talk a month or so ago, and I tried to push the point in that talk of, security is really not so much a technical problem as it is a human to human personal problem. Like, we won't deal with things until it gets really personal for us.
Right.
No, we won't,
Oh, I saw that. You said something
healthy, and we won't do certain things until it's personal.
Yeah, you were talking about how, like, are we just accepting this new normal? And then you said, what about when it gets down to life or death? Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's right.
And and that's just, it bugs me from a consultancy perspective, because, like, I have to try to go to customers and try to explain to them why this is a good thing for them and why it's a good investment. And then at the end of the day, deliver it and prove it. Like, I don't get the benefit of just being the sales guy who used to make the sale and walk out of the room.
Yeah. Yeah. You're standing there holding the wrench.
Yeah.
That's right.
But, it's worked out so far. So I'm, and we'll probably talk more about this with Tim next time, but, I'm trying to find ways to increase the NSX adoption rate in companies that are large and small. And, I'm contracted working on a massive deployment for a company right now. And yeah, it's even just a really small job, but, for the networking people that I'm working with on it, they don't have the time to learn this new thing. So that's why they brought me in. And, like, these people are so smart. They're 12 times smarter than I am about all of the networking stuff. And
maybe nine. Maybe nine.
But that's the thing that, once you get into working on large teams of IT deployments like this is really one of my first goes at a massive enterprise scale deployment. And you get on the phone with 12 other people or 20 other people, and, like, people start talking and you're just like, ooh, that guy's really smart.
He just said a bunch of gibberish. It must mean something, though.
Yeah. And
what do you say about BGP what?
Yeah. And then at one point, they're like, I'm on this call for this executive committee that's reviewing things in some office in New York City. And at one point they're asking me to talk about NSX. So at some point I realized, and I told my wife this later, like, I just realized that I was a voice on a conference call in some meeting in New York City today for 5 minutes. Nobody knows who I am. They've never met me before. And all of a sudden I'm just this guy talking on a speakerphone explain something about software and make it, comprehensible.
Nice.
And I'm getting paid for it. Like, this is the bizarrest job ever.
That's awesome. And you're drinking out of a Cohesity bottle, it looks like.
VXpert swag, man.
There you go.
Both are.
Oh, nice.
We are fans of the swag. So if you have swag that you want us to show on the show,
I have some stickers here, but I don't have. I had an external, like, one of those battery bricks that said VxRail on it. I don't have anything else, man. Every time I leave the house, I take everything and give it away. That's
fine.
I've got the vintage VCE bottle opener and refrigerant, mate.
Oh, yeah. There you go. Oh, I do have a VCE mouse pad.
Nice.
It's going to be worth something someday.
Because of some scheduling conflicts, I am not able to go to VMworld this year.
No.
But, yeah.
Neither one of them?
No. And, well, there's no way I'm going to Europe without my wife.
I'm going with my wife.
Yeah, and plus I work for myself, so if I'm not working, I don't get paid.
Oh yeah, okay.
there's that.
Yeah, it's a different story.
Yeah. So as I mentioned before we started recording, we're branding the show with a logo and a bunch of other stuff about the podcast. And my wife found a deal and bought us a package of basically a gift certificate for a company locally here that produces like t-shirts and marketing materials. So we're gonna design this up right, have some shirts, and I'm gonna basically send a box of t-shirts with Tony to VMworld.
Cool.
Nice.
And so,
you're offering one to me.
I will give you one
extra large. Yes.
And basically I want to just have Tony give away like 3 or 4 or 10 every day.
Sure.
As
okay.
he's working on the show, and I ideally I want them to be given to listeners only. So if you're a Gigacast listener, find Tony at VMworld and claim your shirt.
There it is.
And DM him privately beforehand to get a size.
Will you, Tony? Are you going to be bald again at VMworld, or are you going to grow your hair back?
I'm not sure. Maybe I should make a Twitter poll about that.
You should let them know so people aren't confused.
Yeah.
I don't know. I need to. I gotta give me your thoughts on this. Have you all been to opposuits.com?
I'm not familiar.
OPPO suits.com. I think I might be buying my VMworld attire from that website, but I don't know how inappropriate that might be.
Are you going in a zoot suit or what?
We'll go look it up. There's like a Pac-Man suit.
Oh, these guys,
like flamingos all over it, or like stormtroopers.
Ooh, stormtroopers, nice.
See, I always thought it would be interesting to get a suit made where it looked like a NASCAR driver's outfit and walk around VMworld with all the different vendor logos on it.
There you go.
And I was gonna sell myself as a walking billboard through VMworld and see if I could.
The ideas. There you go.
See if they could pay my way to the show.
There's a.
Go for the Captain America one.
Yeah, Captain America and Spider-Man. I was looking at those.
Yeah.
Man.
I like Cap.
You advise or disadvise?
At least one day. You got to do it once.
One day. Okay. Yeah. Monday. Just hit it hard right at the beginning.
Oh yeah.
You totally need this one. Look at the blue steel one. That's even Dell VxRail colors.
Blue steel. How do I get to that one? Where's that one at? Solid color suits.
I just clicked men and then scroll down.
Oh, there it is. Blue steel. Nice. It's the solid color one.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Ooh, R2D2. That's nice.
Yep.
I don't know. I'm thinking the Jag.
I saw the Jag too. Yeah, you mentioned that one a little bit ago.
The Jag one in with the shorts and the short sleeve.
Yeah. Or your daughters might want to buy you Mr. Pink for Christmas.
There you go.
Or Tropicool.
Oh man.
Okay.
Yeah, pretty funny looking suits. Anyway.
Nice.
I've not seen these guys before. That is hilarious though.
Yeah, I ran into a guy who it was like September at a football game, and the dude's wearing the Pac-Man suit. And I'm like, what the heck is wrong with? I mean, that is a sweet suit. I love it. It's hilarious, but it's 105 outside. Anyway.
Yikes.
Man, yeah, right. I'll find you, Tony. I want that shirt.
We'll start to wrap this up. Aaron, is there anything else you want to ask us or talk about?
Dude, I want to just give y'all props for what you're doing. Putting yourselves out there, building your brand. Just keep it up. It's good stuff.
Cool.
That's the number one thing. So,
if as you kind of progress through your career, is there stuff that you do today that if you were talking to, Aaron Bewley 10 years ago, that kid would just be like, no way, I'm doing that?
Probably not, because I'm the type of dude that wants to try everything. So if future me came back and said, hey, you should do this, I'd probably been like, yeah, sweet, man, let's do it. Which is why I'm on the podcast now. I like to try everything just to experience life. I don't know. Do you mean advice wise? Like, what would I have said to myself?
Yeah, I mean that too. I mean, mostly I just like, like I feel like there's moments in my life that happen where, if I told myself that, if I told myself 10 years ago that I'd be hosting a podcast and producing it on an almost monthly basis,
Yeah.
I would
You
just
wouldn't have believed it?
no, I'd just be like, what? I mean, first of all, I probably would have been like, what's podcasting?
Yeah.
And like, second of all, I'd just be like,
Yeah. I would probably say the thing I would have reacted to negatively, most likely, that I would say has helped me the most so far is, and this is going to sound really dumb, but just social media stuff, right? I started Twitter I probably created an account years before that, but really got into it in maybe 2016. And the ability to network there is unbelievable, right? Just to see and connect with people, and then you go and you meet them, like Tony and I met at, what was that, VMworld, like I can't remember, dude. It's been a blur. Maybe last year.
Yeah, VMworld last year. Yep.
Yeah, VMworld last year. And it was cool, and I already felt like I knew who Tony was, rather than just like we would have just walked by each other in the hallway if it weren't for Tony. So Twitter is awesome, and then I'm also a huge fan of sharing. Like, I like what y'all are doing from a podcast perspective. I don't have a podcast. I like to just be on them. I don't ever plan on starting a podcast. I mean, maybe if somebody asks me to co-host one, but I don't have a passion to just start one. But I love it because it is it's getting your voice out there. It's connecting with people. It's sharing. Others can learn, and you guys can talk publicly about what you're doing. And having done that, and like for me, I started doing some YouTube videos that like people were recognizing me for, and it all started back in I want to say, let me pull this up here. It was like maybe 3 years ago. I have a video. It's the EMC storage portfolio video that I did 3 years ago. It's got almost 5,000 views. There was a thing that we had at EMC called EMC Ready. And for whatever reason, I can't remember what happened, but I was unable to be where it was that day. So rather than like just give up and not present, because it was kind of this competition thing, I just recorded it and I sent it in. And everyone was like, man, this is so super helpful. And then it's been getting, hundreds of views every month since then. And people are still going to it. So I just thought, oh, this is pretty cool. Maybe I'll just start to create new things. And then 2 years ago, the EMC, I guess at that point it wasn't Dell EMC. It was, or no, I guess it was. Yeah, it was Dell. Excuse me, it was Dell EMC VxRail. They had a competition for a video thing, and so I went and created it and submitted 2 of them. And one of them, the EMC VxRail VMware integration video, has 3,400 views 2 years ago. And then I did one for VxRail for mid-market customers. It has 1,100 views. And it just got really fun, and I enjoyed sharing my thoughts a lot of times to see if I'm off base, right? Because I just kind of operate in this, I go out and I talk to customers and I get feedback from customers. But if I can create and put something out there, much like you guys are doing, I'll find out what people like, what people agree with, what people disagree with, and make myself better and make others better.
Yeah.
And so those 2 things, like talking openly on Twitter and then publishing things that I think are real or factual on YouTube, and then people can call me out, or people can say, yeah, I agree with this. It helps everybody, right? So those are probably the 2 biggest things that I would have said to myself, 3 or 4 years ago. Hey, get in this now, right? So,
and being a solo entrepreneur, which is it sounds cooler than it is. Trust me. I constantly am trying to find myself ways of talking to an audience.
Yeah.
And this is one way of doing that.
Yeah.
And so I started trying to take in all this marketing content about how to communicate to people. And I, like a couple of years ago, I stumbled across this guy on the internet named Gary Vaynerchuk.
Yes, dude, I was about to tell him about you, or tell you about him. Tell him about you. It
Well,
sounds like tell you about him.
If you knew him, that'd be awesome. And he's one of these guys where like almost nobody that I know in tech circles knows who he is.
Yeah, I know him.
but he he's constantly kind of out there talking, basically like just put something out there.
Yes.
And he's a large reason as to why I started the podcast, because I was at work at one of my client offices late at like midnight one night, and he's just like, this year you need to put out something in the audio space. If you can't write, if you can't do videos, but if you could talk and put on a podcast, do that.
Yeah.
So like I texted Tony, I'm like, dude, do you want to be on a podcast with me? And he's like, dude, yes. And here we are.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, Tony, good on you for saying yes. And Britton, I mean, thank you for doing something, right? And Gary talks about that a lot. He's like, there's so many people that will call in and ask questions. I give them advice, and I say, email me in 60 days or 6 months and tell me where you're at. And he's like, nobody emails me because they fall off. They don't do it, right? And you're doing it. So I applaud you for that, man. That's half the battle, is just getting things out there, right?
Well, and if I
being
had
a leader.
And if I hadn't joined the VXpert community and started, doing a blog and all the talks and user cons and things that I've been doing, I wouldn't have been at a point where I was comfortable saying yes to Britton either. I would have still been in that stage of fear and public speaking and what do I have to contribute and all of that. So a lot of that background stuff really helped prepare. When he said, you want to do it? I'm like, heck yeah.
Yeah. Dude, I hear that so many times. What do I have to contribute? So many people second guess themselves. Mm-hmm. And I talked about this on another show, and everybody has their own unique views. They have their own unique experiences that are worth sharing. And if you feel like you just don't understand or grasp something, then just ask about it and talk about it in that medium. Because if you don't get it or you don't understand it, I guarantee you there's hundreds or thousands of other people, hundreds or thousands, hundreds of thousands.
Well, both are true, really. But
yeah, that don't get it.
Yeah.
So,
and then go ahead.
No, it's just like, I think everybody's mostly just afraid of, sounding stupid in public. Right.
Yeah. Yep.
Which I'm more than willing to take that on, I guess.
Tony, are you hearing Britton's audio all right, or is it just me?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I already sent him a.
I just switched it once. Is it better now?
Yeah, there we go. Yeah. So my wife's waving at me.
Okay. I gotta get a chance to watch your video from 3 days ago. Personal branding advice. I haven't gotten a chance to watch that yet.
Yeah, check that out.
Well,
but Aaron, you hit it on the head, though. So the last thing I'll say, they just second guess themselves. They don't feel like, or they're afraid of being judged for putting their thoughts on paper or speaking into a microphone and somebody capturing that. And I as you'll see if you go to my YouTube channel, I started vlogging as well. And almost every single person I put in front of the camera is like, oh, I don't want to be on camera. I'm like, why? And they're like, oh, well, I just don't like the way I look on camera, or somebody's going to hear what I have to say. I'm like, what? I mean, I totally get it and I respect it, and I don't force it on people. There might be one person that I've he just hasn't denied, hasn't fought back on it enough, but dude, do it. I don't know what to say other than do it. It will make a world of difference. All the difference in the world.
It's good enough for me.
You gotta say it in a Ben Stiller voice. Do it.
Do it.
Do it. Do it.
Yeah.
Well, Aaron, thank you very much. It has been a pleasure to meet you and, wave at you virtually.
Likewise, man.
And I hope someday that I can shake your hand in person.
Absolutely.
So we will have to do this again. I'm sure there's much more we can talk about.
Yeah.
I feel like when do you know Cody DeArkland from VMware?
Yeah. I know of him because of Twitter.
Okay. Like he was one of our first guests.
Yeah.
And I mean, him and I, clicked when I met him at VMworld. I mean, he's just, super great guy. And I feel very much the same with you. Like, we're kind of kindred spirits. So thank you for joining us.
Sweet.
So
yeah, man. Thanks for having me on, and thanks for listening to Gary V and documenting.
Yeah, I think the everybody complains about his cussing in his keynotes, but man, it's good stuff sometimes.
Yeah. He can be a bit over the top sometimes. Sometimes it feels gratuitous, but I take it as his passion. It's just the fire in his belly. Like, he wakes up and he just wants to eat everything. and everybody.
Yeah.
Like when he talks about the keynotes that he goes on, he's like, dude, I want to get up there and make the people that listen to the person before me wonder why they even clap for that person. I want to give them so much value. It's insane. He's just so competitive like that. He's like, I see a microphone, I want to take that microphone.
The last thing I heard him say, and we can end on this, is he was giving a keynote somewhere, and he's like, everybody who's run a Facebook ad and it didn't work and you thought it sucked, you know, stand up. And like half the crowd in this audience of like however many thousand people stands up, and they're just like, we're not doing Facebook ads anymore because they don't work. It's like, he's like, everybody else, look at the people standing up. All these people suck.
Yep.
He's like, no, I'm kidding. I'm not really, but I'm kidding. like, that takes some huge balls to just make a bunch of people stand up and out themselves as running Facebook ads that sucked.
Yeah.
And just call them all out on it.
He's intense, man, but dude, I love things that push me, and he's definitely one of those things. So good stuff.
Well,
cool.
You should call into the Ask Gary V show someday.
Okay, maybe I will.
Yeah. All right.
Thanks buddy.
Again, and I will play us out here, and we'll get this. But you know, again, July 15th is our next episode with Tim Davis. That should be interesting. We'll probably talk a lot about a lot of barbecue. I'm thinking that one too.
Yeah.
So.
All right, fellas. I appreciate you. Have a good night.
Thanks. For being our guest again for Gigacast episode 17. We'll be back at you again in another few weeks, talking to Tim Davis, and keeping an eye out on the Twitters for other episodes forthcoming. We're looking to put together a massive panel event pre-VMworld in August. So much more to come on that. Thanks again to Aaron. He is at Aaron Bewley on the Twitter. I am at VCXNB. Tony is at Import Car Guy. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to y'all later.